Everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and on today's video I'm coming at you with a new kind of vlog slash series called Read It or Reap. Hello, it's me, Editing Kirsty. I just wanted to clarify a few things that are going to crop up later in the video, but rather than edit them out and it not make sense, I want to explain now. First thing is that I have decided now that I will do prompts like G does in her videos, because I thought that would just be a fun thing to do. But what I'm not going to do is have one in every single book. I'm just going to have a little stack of like 10 to 15 prompts and then draw from random. Like I'll pick the book and then I will choose what, or randomly pick the prompt, blind pick the prompt that I will do as like a little extra reading activity. And I have decided during this, I was struggling to think of like a punishment. So if I didn't read the book, if I get a significant way through the book, like 50% or more, and I decide to DNF, then there won't be any kind of side effects or punishments. That will just go on the unhaul pile. But if I either choose to not read the book at all because I just don't want to read it anymore, or if I give up very, very quickly, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to roll a dice, like a D4, and however many whatever that number is between 1 and 4, I either have to decrease my number of read books by whatever number I roll, or I have to increase the to be read books by the number that I roll. Could make things very interesting when we get to the end of the year. I have in front of me 4 stacks of books, and they are 10 books each. So I have 40 books in piles in front of me that are currently blocking access to my clothes. And so I need them gone. But I kind of got the inspiration to do this through Becca and the books. Obviously she is a legend here on BookTube, but I've only recently started to watch her content, and she's doing a vlog series to try and clear her overspill on her TBR. She's got like 70 books that are currently just piled up, and she needs to get them off the floor and onto the shelves. Unfortunately, her shelves are so full that basically any of the books that she takes from the floor to put onto her red shelves, she'll need to do a bit of an unhaul. And while I'm not in that exact position, because I do have some shelf space, I don't have 40 books worth of shelf space. So I kind of took that idea of trying to clear some of my books. These shelves behind me are the books that I have either been really, really excited for or have purchased a while back. And then I recently took out loads of books that I'm not sure I do want to read anymore. They were kind of a lower priority. For one week I was going to do try a chapter week and try sort of 4 or 5 of them. And then I also have all my latest books that have come in the last month. It was just a mixture of books that are recent purchases and ones that I'm not entirely sure I want to get to. But either way, they are ones that are just going to hang around for a while if I don't get to them soon. So I've put them into these piles, and then I'm taking inspiration from G from Book Roast. She's been doing a series lately where she rolls a D20, and ironically, as I started filming this, it just popped up with a notification saying that the next one is out. And what she's been doing is rolling a D20, picking her book, and the book has a little prompt for her to do while reading it. And while I'm not doing the prompts, because I just feel like I've got enough stuff going on to not do a prompt on top, I do have inspiration with her with the dice. So I have my own little D20. Well, it's not actually little, but it's quite a big D20. A D4 to determine which pile I'm going to be rolling from. And yeah, so because there are only 4 piles, if I roll the D4, a 1 and a 2 is the first 2 piles, 3 and 4 is pile 3 and 4, and then I'll roll the D20 for one of those 20 books. Kind of self-explanatory. Whatever book I choose, I have to start reading it as my next read. Otherwise, there is a little bit of a punishment where I will have to unhaul a book. I'm no longer doing my weekly vlogs, so I will be doing this as a sort of monthly, or ideally once a month, if not every other month. I'll be doing this as a little series throughout the year to try and get these piles of TBRs down, but also to do some life and other updates. So yeah, let's just show you the books and then we'll get started. Here are the stacks of books. So you can see there's a mixture of genres and a mixture of hardback and paperback. You can see there's some that have been on my TBR. I think this is one of the longest books that's been on my TBR, as well as this one. They've both been 5 years this year. And then up to, we've got Infinity Alchemist that arrived about 2 weeks ago. Problem with Perfect I bought a couple of weeks ago. I've got a few that I picked up at a charity shop not long back. And then we have a few more here that are a mixture of ones that I've had for a long time, and then Shiver that I got in December. So we're going to roll, and quite lovely, my camera stand has a little groove in it here, which is perfect for dice rolling. 4, which means we will be selecting from one of these 2 stacks. And the book we have book number 3. 1, 2, that was nice and easy. So the first book we've picked is The Doll Factory by Elizabeth McNeil. Oh, I was like, I recognise that author's name. Why do I recognise it? I've got another one of her books in this series that I've had for multiple years. I picked this up at Clumber Park National Trust site. I went over Christmas with Ren and my family, and I picked this up a couple of years ago when I stayed at my dad's. It was from a charity shop in the Mansfield region, or Worksop, one of the two. I picked it up a bit randomly. It's not really the sort of thing that I would read, but also I do know that a TV show just came out, or is coming out very, very soon, based on this. So I'm kind of like intrigued more to read it now, because then I can watch the visual media. But we have here London 1850. On a crowded street, the dollmaker Iris Whittle meets the artist Louis Frost. Louis is a pre-Raphaelite painter who yearns to have his work displayed in the Royal Academy, and he is desperate for Iris to be his model. Iris agrees on the condition he teaches her to paint. Dreaming of freedom, Iris throws herself into this new life of art and love, unaware that she has caught the eye of a second man, Silas Reed. I'm a bit of a sucker for people called Silas. I don't know why. I see the name Silas, I'm instantly intrigued. Silas Reed is a curiosity collector enchanted by the strange and beautiful. After seeing Iris at the State of the Great Exhibition, he finds he cannot forget her. As Iris's world expands, Silas's obsession grows. It is only a matter of time before they meet again. So it kind of sounds a bit stalkery and not really the kind of thing that I enjoy reading, but I don't know. It could be good. I've heard a lot of good things about this, and I am trying new stuff this year. I don't want to read loads of new stuff, but I am finding that recently I'm not attracted to fantasy as heavily as I normally am. Even though it is my favourite genre, it seems to be one that I'm straying away from. But other than romance and contemporary, I'm not really sure right now what is my sort of genre. So I am branching out and trying new things, and this will be the first of those. I am 30 pages into The Dollhouse, The Doll Factory. Surprisingly, kind of hooked. I literally read, what am I on, page 33 pages in about 40 minutes. I kind of started it and was like, oh, I'm at risk of staying up all night reading this. I'm liking the introduction of the characters so far. I'm liking where we're getting quite an interesting dynamic between these sisters. The one that was always conventionally like the pretty, attractive, beautiful one that everyone thought was going to marry well and produce all these beautiful babies. She contracted smallpox, and the scarring as a result of that have rendered her... She is described as having quite bad scarring, and that now no man will look at her, and she's kind of shrunk into herself. And so that means that her sister, who, because she was born with a slightly warped collarbone, and it's affected her posture a little bit, she was always seen as the gangly, ugly, unattractive one. And now suddenly she's the one that people notice, and it's created this not great dynamic between them, where the doctor who's now in the limelight feels really guilty for taking her sister and like taking that place, and the sister is resentful of her other sister, of her twin, because she's like, that should be me and that was me. And yeah, it's kind of interesting with that introduction, and we definitely get the idea with Iris straight away that she's someone who, she has ambitions, she doesn't want to be stuck in this one place for the rest of her life, and she wants to do more with her life, especially around art and drawing. And it was a really interesting concept to begin with. Silas already gives me the creeps. He's been introduced as, like, he's a taxidermist. It says curiosity collector, so, but a lot of it involves taxidermy, but it's basically like one of the things that he's had brought to him by his little assistant is a two-headed puppy that was born and died immediately, and so he's collected it and is now turning it into a sculpture of some kind. And he also, for artists and things, he also makes like these little glass jars and things with animals, and he poses them sort of as taxidermy so that artists can draw them and paint them. And you get this sense that he is someone obsessed with death and decay, and the fact that it has talked about that as a youngster, when he first found a fox that was dead, and he basically just went to it every day to watch it decompose. And then it was talking about how he used to kill rabbits to sort of do it and just watch them, and I was like, doesn't bode well. The one thing I will say, it was borderline making me want to stop reading, because obviously, as you know, anything to do with sort of kids and animals tends to be very much a no read for me. It's why I stopped reading The Binding by Bridget Collins. But I will say this didn't go too in depth into the level that The Binding did, and it stopped describing what he was doing just as I was getting to the point of, I don't know if I can read this anymore. But it did it enough that I was getting very uncomfortable, and it has definitely set me off on a very uncomfortable vibe with this character, which I feel is the point. But yeah, I'm just like, oh my god. So I'm intrigued to see where this is going to go. Yeah, I'm intrigued so far. So yeah, let's see. Literally not even 2 minutes later, and as you saw, we got Cinderella a note. It's because it says Cinderella is dead on the cover. This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron. I bought the Fairy Loot edition of this. Does it have anything under the dust jacket? I don't think so. I think it's before people started to expect everything with their books. Because like nowadays, people expect absolutely everything. They want the embossed covers, the reverse dust jackets, the signed, the sprayed edges. Whereas it used to be with Fairy Loot that you got 1 to 2 of each things. Like, you would pretty much always get it sprayed, but it's like signed. But you would either get sprayed edges, or you would get the embossing, or you would get reversible end papers. And in this case, all we got were, you know, we just got some plain sprayed edges. This is LGBT. I've got a little sticker on it that tells me it's LGBT, so I don't know what the rep is, but we'll find out. But this one is To Break an Ancient Curse, She Must Let Her Power Bloom. And it's a teenage girl who inherits a house. Like Braces has a gift, she can grow an apple tree from seed in a heartbeat, and flowers bloom at her touch, and when she inherits an old house, she suddenly has the privacy to test her powers for the first time. But as Bree starts to magic the house's rambling grounds back to life, she finds she has also inherited generations of secrets. In a hidden garden overgrown with the most deadly poisonous plants on Earth, a dark legacy lies waiting for her, and Bree's long-departed ancestors won't let her rest until she finds it. Now, I read Cinderella is Dead. I gave it 3 stars because there were some things I liked, some things I did not like. But everyone that I know who has read both of the book, like this and Cinderella is Dead, said this is the far superior book. So I have hopes. And I also have a little bookmark that I got from Yelp. I'm pretty sure I picked this up at Yelp. So it has Cinderella's Dead on the back and Poison Heart. So yeah, let's see how we get on. And hopefully we have a better success. Update for this Poison Heart. I've taken the cover off because I don't want it to get damaged. So here it is. But it's, I think, 2 or 3 days since I pulled for it, and I am nearly finished. I only have this left to go. Things I am really enjoying so far. It's so much more atmospheric than I was expecting. I'm starting to get suspicions about a couple of the characters. Like, I'm wondering, it does mention curses in the write-up, and I'm like, okay, I'm wondering now if the curse isn't just her and her family. So I'm really liking that it's a bit more atmospheric. It's had a couple of like moments that have had me sort of have a chill go up my back. So I was like, oh, this is a bit more like thrillery than I was expecting. I love the plant magic. I love learning about these plants and these poisonous ones in particular. But there are a few niggles. Like, she's just moved into the estate of her biological family's home. She was adopted by 2 mothers as a baby, had nothing to do with her bio family until the last one's just died and has left her the house. But she just doesn't seem to really have any kind of, like, she's exploring the house and she's exploring the poisons, and she's exploring the family line and where her abilities come from. But it just feels like she doesn't really have any interest in the actual family members themselves. Like, if that was me, I would kind of be wanting to know, like, you know, what kind of people they were. Especially if I'm going to be moving into the house that they've left me, or wanting to find out a bit more about the history of the family. So that's felt a bit, And as with my problem with Cinderella is Dead, it's kind of the romantic interest has come in and it's just like, boom, punch, I'm in love. Not so fond of that. But everything else about this I have been enjoying, and it's, you know, I've managed to get this far in a little over 2 hours. So yeah, I'm gonna head off, but I thought I'd give a little update on this one. So I am gonna, this one will probably end up on the red shelf, so I won't have to unhaul anything this time. But we shall see. There's still, you know, the ending might be absolutely horrific, but I can't see it being. So yeah, I'm gonna continue and I'll let you know my final thoughts. I am now on chapter 22. I'm still really enjoying it, and one of the things that I'm really liking is anytime I feel like things are starting to slow down and maybe not be so enjoyable, it just comes back and I'm like, okay, cool, and it switches up. And I feel like we're starting to actually have things really kick in now. Some of my suspicions about the people around this town, and I feel like we're finally hitting a point where we're going to start finding out some of the truths and some of these answers. And so yeah, I'm definitely enjoying this one. I did have to stop reading for about 4 days. This has been a really bad week for me. I had a 3-day migraine and I'm currently still in the post-drome of that. I've been able to do some things today, like my laundry that I've just remembered has not gone in the dryer, so I need to go do that because it's now 9 o'clock at night and it needs to go back on my bed before I can sleep. I watched the 30-minute episode of Bluey, The Sign, and there was one scene in particular, like, I feel so sorry for Ren because they just got a voice note of me breaking down, and it kind of acted as a bit of a, it was like I just pulled the plug and I just went into one of those cathartic, full-on, like, hiccupy, sobby, snotty cries, and I just let myself go for about 10 minutes, which then triggered another headache, which was fantastic. But I'm feeling so much better emotionally. I just kind of feel like it was a reset, and now I'm like, I really want to get back to my reading. So yeah, I'll come back in a bit and see how we're getting on. This Poison Heart is finished, and absolutely this one is staying. This one is going straight onto the shelves in a minute. I haven't yet put it through Corpile. I will pop up here when I have and let you know what I gave it, but it is currently either a 4 or a 4.5, and I think it's going to be more of a 4.5. There are a couple of things I didn't enjoy, which is why it's not a 5. For example, this is the second book that I've read by this author, and the second book that the romance has just not been it. And I feel like in both books, there, like especially this one, there was no need for a romantic element in here. And I actually really felt at points where it was like, why have we got a romance? Why is there any kind of romance in this? This would have been fantastic as it was and would have been 5 stars if there wasn't that element in there. And the reason I don't like how Callan writes romance is because they come across very insta-love. Like, Brysis meets her romantic interest and is immediately infatuated and like, I can't stop thinking about them, and every time I look at them I'm distracted by the skin and the lips and the hair. And however, that was about the only thing that I really didn't like, and I felt once there was a romance introduced, it didn't completely take over, but it took over enough that it started to get annoying for me, and it just was wholly unnecessary. However, things that I loved. For one, there were so many things I thought were either going to happen, or there was like an interaction at the start where she is told by a woman who runs a herbal shop or a plant shop in the town, and she's like, quite cryptically, she's like, do you stock oleander? And she's like, no, I don't. And the woman's like, don't. And then a couple of chapters later, she's bringing oleander into the house to dry it out. And I was like, you were told specifically not to do that. And then towards the end of the book, we find out why. And it was like, you were told. And then it was like, wait, what? Does that mean that that woman was... And I had theories about who this woman was, and I'm still not convinced that she's not going to come back in some kind of weird way. So, you know, there were things I kind of saw coming, like Marie. I had thoughts about her pretty much immediately. I was like, I predict this, and I was right, and I was like, ha. But then there was another element to her that I was like, I did not see, and I was like, oh, okay. So even though I was able to predict certain things, some of them came true but had a twist or had something extra that kind of threw me off. There was one character in particular that I genuinely was shocked, and I was like, yeah, what, mate? Like, I just didn't see that coming. And then at the last like 4 or 5 chapters, I was in a chokehold, and I was just like, what? I did not see that coming. So I'm starting to think that maybe kind of darker, witchier plant books are my thing, because oh my god, the magic in this was incredible. All of the detail about the different plants. It's a story that's steeped in sort of poisons and magic and bloodlines and Greek mythology. So if you're into all of that, you will love this. I also did not know that it was going to be Greek mythology. I've not really looked up reviews, to be honest, but nowhere did I see, either on the blurb or like people talking about it, that it's all based, well, majority of it is based around that. So I was like, oh, okay. And as someone who typically doesn't enjoy or doesn't really seek out Greek mythology and Greek retellings, it was kind of oh, but by the time I realised that that's where it was going, I was already quite hooked and really enjoying it. So yeah, back to the main story. The magic system in this was fantastic with all the plants. I loved the details of everything. I loved being able to look up the plants, and it definitely took me down a little rabbit hole because I spent the day researching poisonous plants and looking them up. And I remembered we have a poison garden here in the UK, which is a garden that specialises in poisonous plants. And it's really, really funny because they have like a little slate outside that says X number of days since the last person fainted. And apparently it's very, very, very common for people to faint, throw up, pass out. They've not had anybody die, but they've had a few close calls where people have collapsed or they've gotten a bit too close, or stupid people touching the plants. Because why wouldn't you touch the most deadliest plants on the planet? And so I was looking all that up and I was like, oh, how far away is that? I really want to go at some point. And I know that next time Ren's over in the UK, that'll probably be a place that we can go, because I know they'll be very interested. And I can already guess the comment down below is going to be, hell yeah! But yeah, I just loved all the magic. I'm really loving reading books with sentient plants at the minute, because A Rose Among Thorns last year, when I read that, I really enjoyed the sentient ivy plant that was there, and the way that it was almost like a dog, the way that she talked to it, like sit down, and it did. I loved how the plants reacted with Brysis. I loved Brysis's interactions. I loved Brysis's mums. They were fantastic. And yeah, I just ended up having a really, really good time. And definitely by the end I was like, I cannot wait to find out what happens next, and the ending was so good. I also, from this book, now have my first quote from I have like a little box here, so if a quote really resonates with me or really hits, I'll write it down. And I have the very first one of the year from this book, which is "Death is only painful for the living." It's a very interesting quote anyway, because, you know, some deaths are very painful, but they're talking about the aftermath, like once the person has died, that the death of that person is only painful for the people left behind. And in the context of this book and why it's said, it punched me so hard in the heart. I was just like, whew. So yeah, this one was really beautifully written, really well executed. I can't wait to try and get a hold of the sequel. Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading has also read and loved this book, and we've agreed we're going to do a buddy read of the sequel together. So yeah, also if you have any recommendations for books with that kind of I think Belladonna is now going to be on my radar. It wasn't, but after reading this, I think it now is. But if you think of any others where there's like sentient plants, or the book is centered around sort of poison and dark witchy magic and sort of like creepy gothic poisonous plant, sentient plant and magic around that, please do let me know below, because I'm very much interested now in seeing if that is a genre or if it's just this is a one-off. And there's been a couple in the past that I've read with very similar vibes and I've loved. But yeah, this one is done, which means it's time for our next roll and to pick our next book, which I don't know if that's going to be the last one for this vlog. We shall see. Okay, as you can see, I have space. And that is gonna live there. Same as always, stacks of books. 1 and 2 is from this pile. 3 and 4, that pile. And we have my little Daisy Days. Yeah. 3. So it will be one of these books. Let's see. Unlucky for some, hopefully lucky for me. 13. Ooh, Sky in the Deep. Okay, so our next read, Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young. Now, I've had this on my shelves for so long, and I've read this blurb so many times, I don't even need to read it. I can't remember the character names. I just remember it is set in the Viking period, which is what drew me to it in the first place. She is from one clan. They've been at war with another clan for as long as she can remember. Her brother disappeared or was killed years ago by the other clan, which fueled her hatred. She is now grown up and has trained to be a warrior, gets into a fight, ends up being captured by the enemy clan, where she discovers that her brother not only is alive but has joined them. She is then put under the care of his friend and has no choice but to trust him, ends up falling for him, which complicates things with the whole I hate your clan, and now she has to deal with her torn loyalties. It's that whole thing of falling in love with the enemy, and now your loyalties are torn, and if you go with one you'll be seen as a traitor, if you go with the other you're going to be betraying the people you love. And it just sort of, you know, it's one of those situations where it's what do you do? But if I know Adrienne Young, I've read the Fable duology by her, and I really, really, really want to read Saint and get a hold of that. But if I know Adrienne Young, she is fantastic at writing those kind of characters. So I guess whether or not I'm in the mood for it, we're going to get started on it. So let's go. I am now 64 pages and 9 chapters, well, 8 chapters done with Sky in the Deep. So far, so good. There's stuff in it that is kind of very familiar as someone who really enjoys Viking, like the TV show Vikings, and I'm writing my own Viking novel. So there's bits in there where I'm like, you know, this feels like very familiar territory and is stuff that I really enjoy. But I don't know if the authors use like a different country to what I'm used to. But some of the terms that are being used, or if she's made up like her own, but some of the terms being used aren't what I'm used to. So like they've got a word for slave. I'm not even going to try and say it because it's been written in like a Nordic language. And I'm used to thrall being used as the word, and this is definitely not thrall. And some of the gods, it seems like they've been slightly renamed. So again, I'm not sure if this is like a fantasy version of the Viking period where it's similar enough that you can recognise it. But I am enjoying it. You've got the main character, her brother died 5 years ago, or so she thought, because when they're in a battle with the enemy tribe, or clan, she sees him and realises that he has betrayed her clan and joined them. We've just found out in the first little bit where he's turned around to her and he said, well, you all left me for dead, and it was the other clan that found me and healed me, and they earned my loyalty. And she's like, but you left. There's also tension between her and his new best friend, who basically their introduction was him nearly cutting her arm off, and then their next introduction was him knocking her out and then firing an arrow that went through her shoulder, and he has now just purchased her as his slave. Admittedly, it was because her brother was going to try and get her somewhere else before she could be turned into a slave and have the collar put around her neck and put up for sale. But before he was able to do anything, it happened to her, and his friend, who is called Fisker, Fisker heard her screams and saw what was going on, and so he purchased her before this other guy that was clearly not gonna like buy her with good intentions. And literally where I've just got to is him saying to her, I've just bought you and you're going to be with me over this winter and I will get you back to your family in the spring. And she's just like, I don't think so. And that's where I've got up to. And I'm just like, well, we know from the blurb that she's going to fall in love with him, and I'm looking forward to that because this is genuine enemies to lovers. These clans have hated each other for centuries. They've been at literal war with each other, and it's a case of if you see someone from the other clan, you kill them or you make them into slaves. There is no in between. But they're going to be like these two in particular are going to fall in love, and then there's a thing where there's this like there's another clan that are considered thought to be a legend, and they suddenly reappear and start attacking them, and suddenly it's them against legend. And so suddenly it doesn't matter that they've been in a feud for all these years. They now are stuck in the same boat and need to find a way to work together. I am enjoying it, and I do enjoy Adrienne Young's writing. It's very it pulls me in, and I really like how she writes first person perspective. This character, she is stubborn and pig-headed, and even as she's doing things, you're like, why are you doing this? But you can also feel that desperation that she has to escape, and I'm just like, yes please, I'm here for it, I'm excited, let's keep going. So I feel like this one is going to get done and I am going to enjoy it, but we shall see. There's still quite a lot of the book left, but I am hopeful and optimistic so far. I intended to read up to 50%, the halfway point of this today. 3 hours later, I finished the book. This one is a 3.5, very close to a 4 though. So it's like if I did it in 0.25s, this would be a 3.75. There were some things I loved, some things it was a little bit boring. It was a little bit boring, but I enjoyed it. And I do enjoy Adrienne Young's writing. It's very it pulls me in, and I really like how she writes first person perspective. I would say 60 to 70% of this book was kind of more slice of life, nothing's really happening, and it just felt so at odds with the rest of the book, especially once the action started to kick in and once we started to really get into the battles and the fighting. It kind of like started off great with lots of fighting and lots of battles, but then it just kind of, once she was captured and ended up in the enemy camp, it was kind of in the enemy village, it was kind of like a bit too slow paced for that. And then there is a romance in here. It kind of mentions, you know, Fisker and her growing love. And there was like one scene in particular, there was one of my favourite things that ever happens in a book, and it was kind of in that moment where they're tentatively starting to maybe build up something, and then something is done to her, and it was like that he walked in and he was like, who did this? And she was like not saying anything, and then he takes her chin gently and is like, who? And I was just like, because, you know, who did this? It's just kind of one of my things. It's a thing. Like, the protector trope, I know it's a trope as old as time, and I know a lot of people don't like it because it's like, whatever, but I love it, okay? As someone who spent their entire life looking after others, when there is a scenario where it's like me being looked after or the main character being taken care of after they've taken care of themselves for so long, it does things to me, okay? But yeah, even though there were a couple of those moments, by the time they actually were fully into the relationship and sort of, you know, doing the I love yous and all of that, I still felt like we hadn't had enough moments with them. I'd say it's about this kind of amount of the book where they establish and finally sort of, you know, properly get into that romance. But the rest of the book, like all of this, there wasn't enough moments with the pair of them for me to be like, I absolutely love them as a couple and I'm really in it. But I will say I did enjoy so like, you know, on the romance, I would say for my satisfaction, there were a couple of golden moments, but in general, and with the build up that we got before it eventually went into the romance, I would give it probably a 6 to a 7 out of 10. If it had been a bit longer or over a duology, or even we'd had a lot more moments between the two of them having those kind of bonding sessions and having them break down those walls, then yeah, I would have loved that. But I would definitely say that the romance was about a 3-star. But the action and the fighting, when that kicked in, that was 4 to 5 stars. And the Viking world, as I said in an earlier clip, you can tell this is kind of like her own version, that's her own place that's inspired by the Vikings, rather than a historical novel that is actually set in the real world in a real place. But it still felt very familiar, and as someone who loves Vikings, and you know, Vikings is one of my special areas of interest with history, it did definitely give me like, it felt familiar. It felt like, you know, when you play Skyrim, when you watch Vikings, things like that, it kind of felt like I was in the world and it was believable. Halvard, I absolutely loved. Inga was great. Every single character was really believable and was their own identity and their own person, which was great. But like I said, the romance just kind of needed a lot more in there. And I also felt that when, as I said, for about a third to 2/3 of this book, it just went so dead paced. It was like, oh, compared to how it started, it just dropped off a little bit too slow for a little bit too long for my personal tastes. That said, I did have a good time with it, and I did like the writing. And I know there is a sequel, The Girl the Sea Gave Back, which is set, I think, 10 years in the future to this. And so I do want to go and give that one a go. And I definitely, this is now the third I've read the Fable duology and now this, and it's definitely cemented me as a fan of Adrienne Young. So, you know, I'm really happy with that. But with this book finished and with 3 books either DNF'd or completed with what? We had a DNF, a 4.5 and a 3.5. So I think that's a pretty good mix of books to have for the first running of this vlog. And that being said, I am going to wrap it up there because it's taken me quite a while to record and read these books while doing so many other things. And I do want to start getting this series out. And I think 3 books is just a good place to start for now, so we get used to the format. I can already tell you that we'll be starting part 2 with more books than I started with in part 1, but we will talk about that when part 2 starts, because, you know, it has been over a month since I started recording this. So yeah, maybe next time I need to try and shorten the gaps if I can. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. What were your ratings? Do you agree? Do you disagree with what I've said? And also let me know if you've enjoyed this kind of vlog style. As I said, I was inspired by kind of a mixture of Becca and Book Roast for this, and so, you know, please go check out their videos. I will link below both projects that they're working on or have been working on. And yeah, I'm definitely going to continue because I did have fun with this, and it was fun rolling the dice and being like, right, I have to pick whatever book the dice lands on. And it forced me, you know, this has been on my TBR for 5 years now, and it finally forced me to pick the damn thing up and read it. And I'm like, great, we shall see how the next round goes. But for now, I'm going to end it there, and I'm going to love you all and leave you all. I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Don't forget to also check out my Patreon and my shop that is relaunching in May, and the links are all below. I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe, and until next time, bye.